Okay, I guess we better get started. We're having a little bit too much fun visiting and catching up. Happy Mother's Day. We are going to be working off of the same sheet that I handed out last week. And if you don't have that sheet, then Lofton will be glad to bring you one. Would you, Lofton? Will you be my hander-outer? Just raise your hand if you don't have one. Up at the top left, it'll say Sunday Morning Bible Class, May the 4th. If you don't have that one, Lofton will bring you one. We're going to work off of that sheet some more today. We just didn't get through all the scripture that's on it. May the 4th is what it should say, just 1 week ago. And we are going to leap into the book of Proverbs. So if you want to go ahead and go to Proverbs chapter 16. Proverbs chapter 16. Now our memory verse left over from last week will be from Matthew 12, of course, verse 34, the second part of that. Say it with me. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Okay? One more time. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So, if we want to use more wholesome words, what do we have to clean up first? The heart, right? One of the reasons why the wise man said to keep or guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the what? Issues, or it is the wellspring of life, depending on your translation. Proverbs 4 and verse 23. Okay? And so if you would join me today on your list of verses, go about halfway down on your sheet from last week. Proverbs 16, verse number 23. Yeah, thank you. And it reads, the heart of the wise teaches his mouth and adds learning to his lips. What did Jesus say again? Out of the abundance of the what? The heart, the mouth speaks. And here it says, the heart of the wise teaches his mouth and adds learning to his lips. I love the figures of speech in Scripture. I've got a whole book, and it's about that thick. And the whole book concerns, it is written concerning all the figures of speech used in the Bible. There's a lot of them, okay? Sometimes you have analogies. Sometimes you have personification, sometimes of a concept or a thing. And, or like in this case, you have a situation where it looks like there's one part of your body teaching another part of your body. Okay? One of the first things Kelly ever wanted to do when she and I would play together, and I don't know how much playing was going on, but she liked to play teacher, 6, 7, 8 years old. And sometimes for her birthday and her Christmas presents, she'd be given this little stand-up easel-looking thing with a whiteboard on it, so she could write with her markers and wipe it off and then go again. And she'd hand me coloring pages as I sat on the floor. I was her only student, and you could see that little bitty scrawny girl, and every now and then if I wasn't paying attention, Just right. She'd get that finger going at me, and tell me I wasn't doing the problem right or whatever it was. Or she'd ask me a question, and if I didn't know it, well, I just said that just a minute ago, So there she was, a little child teaching a grown-up, and that little playtime for her, teaching me something. Well, here what do we have? We have the heart of a wise person. Because again, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so a wise person, their heart, that heart of wisdom, will literally be the teacher to that person's what? Mouth. And it is as though it is saying here in this passage, a wise heart will teach your mouth what to say. And I think the implication too is maybe what not to say. How to say something and with what tone, as opposed to just being rash or flying off the handle or speaking without first thinking, right? And so you have that concept that the heart of the wise teaches his mouth. Now, what is the opposite of that? What's the opposite of that? What will the heart of the foolish do? Doesn't say here, but what's the implication?
Well, Solomon said in Ecclesiastes about the foolish man whose words on top of words and words and all these things are people, they don't really solve anything. So I think that's the opposite of what he's saying.
Sure.
And even no matter how much you speak, if it's vain or if it's not from the heart, if it's just repetitive stuff, it doesn't really come from the heart.
Sure.
I think that
Or even if it's evil in and of itself. Yeah. So there's really no instruction that a foolish heart will give to the mouth other than what? Just let it spew. Let it go. Okay? Any of you ever been, a few weeks ago, I was trying to treat my yard, and I had a little adapter thing that you put on the end of your garden hose. And after that one thing, ran empty, I said, well, it's time to change that one and put the next one on. So I'm unscrewing it from the end of the water hose. You know what I didn't do before I went to, I didn't turn the water off, at the hydrant, right? And so I got, several turns in before now all of a sudden I look like I've fallen in a lake. I'm so wet, just spewed all over me, right? Now, a foolish heart will allow the mouth to get away with spewing any and everything to whomever, okay? But a wise heart teaches, I hate to use that finger, okay? But teaches, directs, instructs the mouth what to say. So if you are wise, and we're going to see this in so many other proverbs as we go along, okay? If I am wise, over and over and over in Proverbs, it is the case that I watch my what? My mouth.
the concept of teaching, repetitive, consistent,
Yes.
all the things that come with learning,
Mm-hmm.
being taught, and the mind's got to do that. It takes learning, it
That's
takes
it.
effort. It's
That's Not going to happen on its own. And if you couldn't hear Brother Casey, he said in the process of teaching, there is repetition, of course, and then there's consistency with that repetition. But it's something that must be done constantly, else, again, like James says, the tongue can no man what? Tame. You got to stay on top of it. You got to watch it at all times, right? Okay, and then the bottom part of that verse 23, and adds learning to his lips. Same thing, he's just stating it in a different way, but it's the same concept, okay? Now, I didn't put this verse there, but look at verse 24, the one that follows it. Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul, and health to the bones. What kind of words are like that? Every time I read that, I think about the time Samson, when he was on his way back to the Philistines, or on his way back home, one or the other, and a young lion approached him, and of course Samson, the Spirit of the Lord was with him, and great strength came upon him, and he tore that lion, he destroyed it, he killed it. And then on his next time through, in the carcass of that lion, what was there? Oh yeah, honeycomb. Okay, what did he do with that? Well, number one, he took some of it and did what? He lapped it up. Who remembers Winnie the Pooh? Anybody? Winnie the Pooh? What was his weakness? Honey. That's my weakness too. I like honey. Because they messed up a long time ago, and somebody said, well, honey is really better than sugar. Okay? Because it's natural and it's good for you and it has all that good stuff in it. I hope they're right, because I've been wearing the honey out. I like it. Okay? I know somebody who, in this room, who puts honey in his coffee in the morning as a sweetener. That's not a bad idea either. Okay? Luke, at our potluck not long ago, he actually bought a part of the honeycomb, didn't you, Luke? And it's still dripping with honey. Raise your hand if you got a little taste of that at potluck. Some of you did, okay? Absolutely wonderful. Okay, now, let me ask you this. Are the words that you and I speak as pleasant as honey, as fresh as it is in the honeycomb? Is it that sweet? Are our words that sweet? Now just think on that just a moment. Because he says here, that's what pleasant words are like, right? A honeycomb. And then he tells us why. Sweetness of that honey, but this is sweetness to the soul and health to the what? See, back then they really thought highly of honey. Well, what are some things you could say are some of the health benefits of honey? Fresh, raw, maybe even local honey. What are some of the health benefits to that? Okay. There is a firm belief, I don't know if it's proven or not, maybe it is, but that if you have seasonal allergies, by eating honey from a hive in that particular area will greatly relieve the allergies that you have, that come about because of pollen and whatnot. What else? Ooh, bacteria cannot live in honey. It will not spoil. Okay? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, because it's one of God's natural things, we probably have just scraped the surface on how healthy that is for us. Honey. Pure, raw honey, And so what he's saying here is, not only is it sweet, but it also gives what? Health. Health to the bones. Now, when I was growing up, I liked sweet stuff, didn't you? We got a man in this congregation known as the Candy Man, okay? And boy, when I was growing up, I liked candy. When I was a teenager, there was a movie came out, and he was the Candy Man, but it was a horror movie. Anybody remember that? Okay? But nonetheless, there's something about something that's sweet. It's pleasant, isn't it? Okay? How many of you like a good pie? Or somebody like good homemade ice cream or something like that? See? It's palatable for sure, right? Tastes good. All right, but not everything necessarily that has that sweetness is necessarily what? Healthy or good for you. Okay? And so the point here is that he's drawing about this honeycomb is it's both sweet, it's great to the taste, and then it's also health to the bones. It's good for you. Okay? Now, let me ask you this question. I said that Samson did at least a couple of things with that honey inside the carcass of that lion. Now, this is way off topic, okay? But what else did he use that honey inside that lion for? A riddle. And he went down to the Philistines and he said, what? If you can tell me the meaning of this riddle, okay, I'll give you 30 changes of clothes. But if you can't tell it, then you owe me 30 changes of clothes. Okay? Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the something came something sweet. Okay? Out of the strong came something sweet. Okay? He was describing that honey. Okay? That is the place where you have that infamous quote, because they threatened his little girlfriend or his fiance, that if you don't get the riddle out of him and tell it to us, we're going to burn you and your father and all your house down. Okay? And so then Samson said those infamous words that, again, we're talking about the tongue. Okay, so I don't suggest you do this. But who remembers him telling the Philistines, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you basically would not have known that. That's that whole context about the honeycomb and so forth. Okay? So in other words, you found out, but you didn't do it fairly. Okay? All right, anything else on this passage? Pleasant words are like a honeycomb. How many of us can make it our goal to try to speak pleasant words? How many of us can be committed to do that? Be more pleasant with our words to one another. Todd? Yeah. So none of that meat that they made in a lab I've been reading about? Just kidding. Yeah. Yeah. But God made it. He sure had something to do with that honey, didn't he? Because it's been around for a long, long, long time. Good point. All right, let's move to the next passage. Somebody else have something? Yeah, that's what Casey was saying. Bacteria can't grow there, so it'll hold on. I've got some in a jar that it got pushed back behind some stuff. And if you look at it, it looks like you could crumble it in your hands, but it's really not that bad. Melvin, that was molasses. Okay. I'm just kidding. I'm picking at you. All right, Proverbs 13:3. I'm only joking. 13:3. All right, now I don't know if you've caught on yet, but we have got a lot of underlinable verses, highlightable verses. I know a lot of our teen girls and maybe some other ladies, the class I teach out at the school, those girls have their markers. Boy, they underline and marking up and all that. But here's a suggestion. You could color code the book of Proverbs, and you could choose one color with a highlighter just to highlight all the verses that have to do with the mouth or the lips, our speech, for instance. And then you would have a ready resource next time you go back and just need some sharpening up on it, and just look for the color. Okay? Just a suggestion. All right, chapter 13, verse 3. He who guards his mouth preserves his life, but he who opens wide his lips shall have destruction. Okay? Explain to me how that a man who guards his mouth can actually preserve his life. Explain to me the truth there. Okay, he won't talk too much, but how does that preserve his life? Maybe he won't be saying the wrong thing. Okay, there have been people who have literally had their lives taken because of the things that they said. Maybe in essence it was to the wrong person, or it was at the wrong time, or the nature of the things spoken were just so very awful, or whatever the case. Okay, what else? Yeah, some. Can't go back and change what you say, and sometimes that can be destructive to other people's lives, but also to your own, life. All right, so we're talking about honey a little while ago, and Melvin's talking about that molasses. But look at that word preserves. Tell me how we use that word today, because it's going to be basically the same as it was many years ago. Tell me, what was that word preserves? Anybody like peach preserves? What about pear preserves? Anybody make a good fig preserve? Yeah. What are we talking about then when we're talking about preserves? All right, something that's been put up that you can keep. Is there a process to that? Okay, we just lay it out on the counter and it's preserved, right? No. Yeah. Say it again. It makes it staple, yeah, where it could be used, for many years to come. Okay? Now think about this about your life. If we'll just guard what we say, I can preserve my life. In other words, it's possible that I can make my life better. We studied that last week. Remember that? He that would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from what? Evil, and his lips from speaking deceit. Okay? So here's the same concept. You can actually add years to your life. Okay? If you guard your mouth, do you have to worry much about something you said coming back on you? You don't have to, right? You don't have to worry about that phone call or that person that, finally found out what you said, and all of a sudden now they're standing in front of you wanting to know. Back, I grew up in Tupelo Public School, and I can remember some little fights that got started in junior high and high school. Somebody would confront somebody else and say, okay, now say it to my face. See what I mean? And, you knew it was bad times then, right? And so there's the idea, okay? If we'll just guard our mouth, you can preserve your life. What happens if you tell a lie? Have you ever been able just to tell one lie? Anybody? Yeah. Sometimes you have to remember some others just to keep backing that one lie up. If somebody's remembered it and they keep bringing something up that, you lied about, and so we just go on and on and on. That's right. Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that when we get to gossip. And I've heard people say for a number of years, well, it wasn't gossip because it was true. I'm going to go on record and I'm going to say something emphatically true. Okay? Even if it's true, it's still gossip. The fact that gossip doesn't mean just saying things that were untruthful. But if they're harmful, it's not our business to say. If we said them to do harm to another, you see what I mean? That's the nature of gossip. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's gossip, if it was true or not. It's all about the defamation of somebody else's character or just spreading something that, wouldn't it fall into that evil speaking category that we read about? We're not supposed to speak evil of one another, brethren, James 4:11, okay? So how many of us may need to rethink about what gossip really is? And maybe we've thought, well, it was true, so I said it, so no big deal there. It was true. I didn't sin. Well, you may want to rethink that, okay? Because it very well is sin, okay? Yeah, but number one, I want to talk to the person that told me that and why they're telling me instead of going to the brother or sister that evidently has done something awful. I should never know about it. That's the point, okay? And then if they won't, then I certainly, if my brother or sister is in sin, we need to follow what Jesus taught us to do in that regard.
Facebook is the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not.
People will get on there and say anything that they would never say to your face. It's like they've got an open
That goes to the latter part of that verse. But he who opens wide his lips shall have destruction. Okay? You know, maybe a good thing to follow, if you need it, is to think, okay, if I knew this person was standing right here and could hear everything I'm about to say about them, since that's the part of speech that we're kind of going to here, okay, would I still be willing to say it? You know, and sometimes when you have a keyboard or your phone in front of you and no other people, we get brave then, don't we? It's amazing how much courage we have when there's nobody there to confront us over what we say. Now, that may come later. I mean, again, you are putting that out there in front of everybody to see, and it won't be long that whoever it was spoken about will find out, right? But the idea is we ought to be, as God's people, far more restrained in that area. Do you have to say everything or make a post about everything that you think about? Do you? Now, I know for some that couldn't care less about social media and stuff. This might not apply to you in this particular vein, but for many people in this room, it does. But you don't have to say something about everything you see that you disagree with or that you just want to, add a little knowledge about. If it's helpful, fine, but if it's about somebody, that's probably not wise to do. Okay? All right, let's look at our next verse.
Before you go, I just got a
Please.
comment.
Please. Yes, I don't mind at all.
Continue to go back to Ecclesiastes. Paul, before the writer wrote these things that we're talking about here. The first thing that came to mind was he said, don't even say things in your bedchamber. Because essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, a little bird will get out. We talk about how you find out about that. Well, a little bird told you.
Little birdie told me.
References the fact that a bird can find out. The other thing that just always, the wisdom of Solomon, when he opened wide his lips comes to ruin. As you well know, through the Old Testament, the term Sheol is used a lot, mostly referred to as Hades, I think, in the New Testament, but
Or the grave, and yeah.
which is death. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the scriptures continually say that wide is the mouth of Sheol, and open is the throat of Sheol.
That's a good point.
It is the opposite of preserving the life.
Yeah.
So that same brilliant concept.
But there's got to be a connection about he who opens wide his lips is going to that wide mouth of Sheol, more quickly than necessary. It's a good point. Good point. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, 21 of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 23. This passage is going to be much like the one that we just read, and so we may not comment quite as much about it. 21:23. Whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from troubles. I want you to think for a moment about maybe the sleepless nights or that burning in the pit of your stomach or not being able to eat, not being able to get something off your mind. Anybody ever been troubled that way? Just really couldn't focus on anything else. Now, I'm not saying every time we have ever felt that way or gone through those seasons in our life that it had to do with something that we said, but how many of those times have been because of that? See what I mean? And sometimes we can trouble our own soul by something that we've said. Have you ever said these words later? I wish I hadn't said that. Or, I wish I had just walked away. Or, I wish I had calmed down before I said anything. And maybe I wouldn't have said what I said the way that I said it. Okay? So we can trouble our own soul by that. But also, do you like being in conflict with other people? Now, I'm going to tell you, I do believe there are some people in this world who absolutely love something stirred up all the time. I don't know why. I don't understand that. I just don't. Okay? However, if we're not that way and we don't like to see things stirred up, then that's where this guarding the mouth, comes to. And sometimes maybe I don't need to say something that I really feel like I want to say, and I really feel like they need to hear it. Sometimes wisdom would say, are they in a place right now to hear it? See what I mean? Or would there be a more opportune time? We're going to read some passages that say a word fitly spoken or spoken in due season, how good it is. Every time's not the time to say a certain thing or to try to suggest something to somebody. All right? Now, I want some honesty here. And I know I get picked at because a lot of times I say, raise your hand if, okay? But I want you to raise your hand. That's the only way I'll know. I could tell you to stand up, but that's a lot more effort, isn't it? Okay? Raise your hand. Now I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, yeah. Raise your hand if you just love people telling you what to do and how to do it. Raise your hand if you really just love that. Anybody? I'm getting a lot of weird smiles. Well, that's odd. I thought I'd see a bunch of hands in the air. I really didn't. Okay? Now, if none of us love that, let's turn it around. And sometimes maybe the reason people are stepping away from us and trying to walk away, they don't like it either. Okay? And so sometimes, do we have to say something every time? Do we always have to say it the way that we... No. So inasmuch as most people probably don't like being told what to do and exactly how to do it, well, when I try to do that to other people, I need to learn a little wisdom and say, you know what? That may not be my place, or it may not be the right opportunity, it may not be the right time. I may not have that kind of relationship with them to try to say that, okay? Or our relationship may be on thin ice anyway, okay? We need to do some relationship building and rebuilding maybe before I broach the subject, if it even needs to be broached. And you may not be as right about what you want to tell them and how they need to do something as you think you are. Thank you for that. I wanted to say that, but it's hard for preachers just to break it down, So, no, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it like that. But I'm trying to be diplomatic, and diplomatic don't always get the point across. So there you go. All right. So yeah, sometimes we may not be as wise. Look, read the Proverbs as well about the one who really thinks he's wise in his own eyes, or that he trusts his own heart. It's a folly. Okay? So again, I'm not saying to never say anything, never pass along any tidbits of wisdom, but read the room, know the situation, understand the person, and sometimes how they react to things of that nature. And, hey, maybe we wait for a better time, okay? You know what my kids have learned? I think every kid learns this, right? Mom, what kind of mood's Dad in? Daddy, what kind of mood's Mama in? Okay? Because what are they wanting to do? They want to ask something. And if Daddy in a very pleasant mood, then whatever I'm going to ask, he might what? So look, even children have figured out what? Read somebody first, right? And so surely we as adults can put that into practice too. It's not always the right time, and it may not need to be said at all, okay? Now, if that just stepped on your toes, raise your hand. I'm just kidding, don't raise your hand. Let me tell you something. I've been saying this for a lot of years. What'd you say? Did he just tell you take your own advice? Is that what I heard? I'm kidding. It's different. It's different, y'all. Okay. It's different when it's your wife. Okay. I got it. Well, what'd you just say, though? Like the, yeah, all right, and thank you. Here's what I was going to say. Folks, sometimes this is what it boils down to. What do I value the most? This person and my relationship with them, or being right? Because there's some things about being right, at the end of the day, what difference does it make one way or the other? Well, I think you ought to cut your grass like this. Has that got any eternal consequences to it? You know what I mean? So sometimes value, you got to figure out what you value most. Showing that you could win the argument, showing that you were the smarter person, okay. But if you damage or destroy your relationship and the person that you really value, who cares? With a whole lot of things that are just trivial. That's what I'm talking about, okay? Yeah. You may win the battle but lose the war. Yeah, there you go. I knew what you meant, okay? And so again, value people, okay? Value people. And sometimes in these things we have to figure out what or who it is that we really value. Where have we turned to? Let's go to, skip the one in Psalms. We'll close with that maybe, but look quickly at Proverbs 10:19. 21, 23, we did. Whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from troubles. It was much like the one we had previously read from chapter 13. 10:19. A lot of wisdom in this book, people. A lot of wisdom in this book. Whew. Casey, this reminds me of what you had said earlier. Let's read 18 and 19 and 20 and 21. Whoever hides hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a what? Now, how would you go about spreading slander? Gossip with your mouth, right? Verse 19, in the multitude of words, sin is not what? Lacking. Some translations may say sin is in abundance. Okay? Say it again. Sin is unavoidable. But he who restrains his lips is what? Wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver. The heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for a lack of wisdom. And so there's a lot of things that are said there, and when we get to the sin of lying and the sin of gossip or slander and so forth, we'll come back to the ones that we read that are around it. But look at verse 19. In the multitude of words, sin is unavoidable, or it is not lacking. Now, yes? Yeah. When you find yourself in a hole, it might be time to put down the shovel, right? So you don't dig the hole deeper, right? By what you keep saying, okay? That's pretty blunt, yeah. Yeah. That's not very diplomatic, is it? Okay. That was Pee Wee's translation. Oh, man. All right. So let me give you two ways in which I can see that proverb where it has implications. Number one, if we do use less words throughout the day and just in speaking to people in general, doesn't that reason that you might lower the percentages at least of the chances of you saying something you don't need to say? Just as a general principle, just speak less, okay? But I think what it also says too is that a lot of times all the talking we're doing, like Lee was talking about, when you find yourself in a hole, toss the shovel. Just quit talking, because we dig ourselves deeper and deeper. And I find myself doing that all the time. Every time I realize I messed up and I said something I shouldn't have said, okay, then what do we try to do? Then I start trying to make excuses for it. And then I start trying to find a way out. Are y'all familiar with the expression, oh, he done started crawfishing now? What does that mean? He's trying to back away. He's trying to get out of this thing, okay? And the more we talk, okay, and also could be used in those moments to where we have gotten into a heated discussion about something with somebody, and the more people talk in that discussion, the higher the tempers get. And the higher the tempers get, most likely what's coming if it hasn't already started. Some harsh, bad language, profanity, threats of violence, whatever else. So that's what I can see, at least, that principle of the Proverbs. And by the way, Proverbs are what we call maxims that are generally true. Okay? They are generally true. There is one, for instance, that says, when a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. All right, now let me tell you why that's generally true. Did the ways of Jesus please the Lord, please his Father? Were his enemies at peace with him? No, they killed him. And there are some other examples. But generally speaking, in life, if our ways please God, because we're living according to his moral law and his teaching, most people are going to be all right with that because it's good for them too, right? Okay? So that's the idea here. Now, this particular proverb, let's read it again. What was it, 10:19? In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, or it's unavoidable. What does that tell us to do? Limit what you say. Okay?
There's so much truth in song, sometimes lyrics just come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one that says, the words came coming out of my mouth, and I felt it all go inside. But I kept on talking, and she kept on walking.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm trying to talk my way out.
There you go. I wish I could remember all that to tell everybody, but we'll write that down for next week, and I'll just read it. How about that? But I mean, there's a lot of truth to that, okay? In the multitude of words, just saying a lot. If you're with a group of friends, and we done all got to talking a lot, how likely is it somebody's going to start talking about somebody or spreading some of that, what we call juicy gossip? If everybody's sitting around, everybody's telling some little jokes, how far along are we going to be before somebody kind of gets off of telling something that's kind of a wholesome joke, and all of a sudden now it's what? What in Ephesians 5, Paul would say, filthy jesting which is not convenient. See what I mean? So sometimes the longer those things go on, they just open themselves up just to kind of spiral downhill. Okay? And so something maybe for us to watch for. Keep that sheet, if you will. We'll look at Psalm 141:3. That'll be our memory verse for next week. Will somebody circle that, or everybody, and write out beside it memory verse? That's a good one. Guard our mouth and our lips is the basic thing, asking the Lord's help in doing so. And let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Father, as we've studied here, we're so thankful for the wisdom of your word and how much instruction is there and reminders about how much trouble we get ourselves in because of our words. We ask that you would help us all to be more thoughtful, to be more restrained, be more prayerful about what's in our heart and what we do say to others. Lord, to our spouses, our children, our grandchildren, our neighbors, everybody in our life. Help us think about every relationship, and that we would meditate and try to make our words to be just as pleasant and sweet as a honeycomb. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.